Today, we got the bunch of jerks, nickname given to them for being the most savage team on the internet and on the ice. With the Storm Surge taking the league by just that, this team opened some eyes this year, finished top 3 in points in the regular season, and made it all the way to the semifinal. True, they did get swept, but they made it there. How many of your teams made it there? And even though they're late picks, having both a first and a second round pick is huge in this draft, and if they play it right, they can maximize their potential from this draft. But first, let's take a look at this team. They have a great offensive future with tons of speed, talent, and grit that can outplay any style and outwork an opponent in all 3 zones. A strong defensive mindset is ingrained in these guys all throughout the lineup. One thing I found quite interesting about their lineup, well, although yes, the world does see Sebastian Aho as the star, and rightfully so, because he is. When it comes to center depth, he is the only guy. The wing depth and potential for this team is unbelievable. I'm going to show you here. But if you look, the center depth is really lacking. They did try to have Jesperi Kotkaniemi run the second line this year, and although he wasn't bad, I think his contract is safe at $4.82 million, which is a great deal for 7 years, considering that they can either put him at 2C if he works out, or drop him down to 3C and have him be a great depth player. And his contract, relative to what the cap is going to look like in a few years, will be a great deal. And Suzuki is great. He's an awesome prospect, but he's not going to be enough to fill that 2C. Another big need for them is they need defense. Now, although they do have a fantastic defensive core right now, they don't have any prospects of note under the age of 27. And with many of their defenders still having a good amount of mileage left, I think it would be smart to draft a player, even if it's a project player, to start developing in the minors or wherever they're playing, and eventually come up and be a great player, whether it's due to injury or other players starting to fade due to age. The really interesting thing about the Carolina Hurricanes development program for the defensemen is that they're really able to develop any kind of player. It doesn't really matter what style of play, although it's not to the caliber of Nashville, as I talked about in the other video. Go check that one out. Even if it's not a player they draft either, if it's someone they sign or they acquire another way, they bring in every single style of play and make it work as one cohesive unit. Take a look at their lineup. Slavin, Pesce, Shea, Chatfield, Burns, and Gostisbehere all play completely different styles of play, but yet it worked out so well to their advantage. They can incorporate any kind of defenseman into their system. So that's why, in my opinion, I believe unless that there is a crazy good defensive prospect still on the board in the first round, they should try and look and lock up that 2C. And another great thing about their lineup is that, as I stated before, they're working from the wings to the centers. So it doesn't have to be a ridiculously good prospect to be their 2C, although it would be fantastic. They need someone who plays their style of game, fast, gritty, defensively minded, but who can also jump up in the rush and create dangerous opportunities in the offensive zone and capitalize. Thankfully for them, there are a lot of players of that caliber that can be drafted that late. And with such a deep draft, as I've always stated, they have great upside as well. Let's quickly explore 3 options. Grayson Sawchyn, 5'11", 165-pound center for the Seattle Thunderbirds in the WHL. Started the season off hot, but when demoted to the third line, he's still produced pretty well, finishing the year off with 18 goals, 40 assists for 58 points in 58 games. If you watch the film, he's a fantastic two-way player, has a strong defensive mindset with grit and tenacity to get the puck and defend his own zone, but also has a great offensive IQ and can jump up in the rush and be creative and crafty, as well as quick and decisive on his edges. Being a solid playmaker with a booming shot to boot, this kid has a lot of promise. He is my official pick, but the reason I'm picking 3 players is because in every mock draft I've seen, these guys always are going in the second round, so all 3 should be available. It's just depending on which guy they want to pick. Next player is David Edstrom, 6'3", 187-pound center from Frölunda in the J20. Great, slick, puck-moving offender, with once again speed and grit in the defensive zone. With 15 goals and 13 assists for 28 points in 28 games, he was quite a solid player. The reason his stats are so low for being such a great player, he was pushed down the lineup because Sweden has some fantastic talent coming in the pipes this year. So unfortunately, that means a guy like Edstrom gets pushed down the lineup, or at least gets decreasing minutes. Either way, he's still projected to go in the second round, which is a pretty solid spot to go. Him and Sawchyn both play a fantastic two-way game that would highly benefit the Carolina Hurricanes. It would fit in with their scheme perfectly. The next guy I've been raving about is one of the biggest steals of this draft, Oscar Fisker Mullgaard from Denmark, 6', 163-pound center from the SHL. He's a great skater with high IQ and creativity, just needs to work on execution and gets more muscle. Has fantastic defensive IQ as well, but needs to execute more. If you want to hear me explain more about this kid, go check out my Colorado Avalanche video. I rave about him. All 3 of those guys are perfect fits for their scheme specifically, and I believe one of them will be their pick in the first round. Quickly, I'm going to touch on who they should get in the second round. Like I said, they can take any defenseman, so they could take a project player and develop him into a star. Aaron Manetian from the U.S. National Development Program. Filthy, slick skater with crazy offensive upside. Needs to spruce up his defensive IQ and execution, but if this kid gets it on point defensively, people are going to wish they picked him up. He is a steal. I also think Andrew Strothman in the Youngstown Phantom is another great pick. He plays with tenacity and grit with a good level of skill. Matthew Mania from the Sudbury Wolves is also a good pick. With their system specifically, they can make any of these guys work. Thank you all for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and comment the next team you want to see.